Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Awesemo.com part one of our NFL preview, where we'll be breaking down today the offseason moves, the coaching changes, the Vegas win totals, MVP odds, and all the things that you need to know for every single NFL team. We'll be delving into quarterback rankings, running back rankings, wide receiver rankings, all of that stuff in coming weeks. We're going to be having one of these videos along with a very long form, probably column for me every week, sort of giving you all the details you need to know. I'm Chris Spags, joined by my good pal, the Chubster himself, Josh Engelman. How are you doing, Josh?
Pretty good. At least I'm trying to be pretty good. Not the best mental day for me. Everything I do is wrong, so this should be great. Let's dive in.
Hopefully you're ready for some football.
I am. A Monday night party.
That's all we need. A Thursday morning party, because the first part of our video got eaten by the production goblins. So we're really prepared. We're ready to do this now. We're going to try to get through this as fast as we can. There are 32 NFL teams, but we're going to do what we can do to make this a palatable video. Let's start with the Arizona Cardinals. 2017, they had 8 wins. 2018, they have 5.5 Vegas projected wins. Their new head coach, Steve Wilks, coming on board from Carolina, where he was the Panthers defensive coordinator, spent 6 years in that organization, trying to bring a defensive mindset to Arizona, also changing over their defense, switching to a preferred 4-3 from their more successful 3-4 in recent years. Big changes at coach, obviously, with Bruce Arians leaving. At quarterback, with Sam Bradford coming in, along with Josh Rosen, trying to replace the retired and occasionally good Carson Palmer, a proud USC man, so I can't bash him too much. Had other changes at wide receiver. They have lost both John and Jerron Brown, so the team is getting less Brown by the day. That wasn't the same joke I had in part one, which was much better. But they did add Bryce Butler, expected to help take some of the pressure off of Larry Fitzgerald. They also have Chad Williams, expected to move up the depth chart. How do we feel about Arizona? How do we feel about the drop in wins?
Yeah, minus 150 on over 50 or over 5.5 right now. I don't love it. They really need Sam Bradford to be healthy, which is a tough bet. I don't like that idea. I assume that, he will continue to be brittle, and the combo of Mike Glennon and Josh Rosen just doesn't get me excited. I like David Johnson from a fantasy perspective, though, coming into this year. Their offense leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, it is worth noting with David Johnson, he missed a lot of last year, but his injury isn't one of those that's expected to have any carryover, since it was just a wrist/hand injury. So he should be good to go. There is a decent chance as well the Cardinals end up playing from behind a lot, which should add some benefit, I would think, to David Johnson as a pass-catching receiver who just touches the ball a ton. Maybe some value as well with Sam Bradford. One thing to note at offensive coordinator this year is Mike McCoy, who led the Broncos last year to 4.8 yards per play, which would be 28th in the league. So not the most inspiring change from vertical Bruce Arians, who'd love to throw it deep and sling it like a pilled-up Brett Favre. But I think there may be some fantasy potential here, especially for David Johnson, maybe for the quarterback if it's Bradford, Rosen, or Mike Glennon. But besides that, it's hard to trust, I would say, besides David Johnson.
Yeah, minus 66 point differential last year, but finished 8-8. I think that minus 66 makes the over-under look a little bit more feasible.
Yeah, I would agree. So 5.5 wins sounds about right for me. I wouldn't want to go much more. Probably wouldn't want to go much less.
Agreed.
On to the Atlanta Falcons. 2017, they had 10 wins. 2018, they have 9 Vegas projected wins. They're returning all of their coaches. Dan O'Quinn, somewhat reviled offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian, who I will never forgive. Again, another USC reference. I'm a proud alum, and he ruined several campaigns there for them, but apparently we've all forgotten about that and think he's an okay offensive coordinator now. They also returned their defensive coordinator, so a lot of the same here for Atlanta. Both units they had last year were solid but unspectacular. They were 11th in offensive yards per game and 8th in defensive yards allowed per game. And one big addition offensively is rookie Calvin Ridley, who had a ton of draft hype. And unfortunately, I don't feel the best about him because he might be the worst graded athletic wide receiver coming out of the draft, according to his SPARQ score, which is something which has been a pretty good indicator of success in the past for guys like Jerick McKinnon. And I'm trying to think if there's one other noteworthy guy. Yeah, I was
I
actually
think
Jacob
I
Junis.
think Chris Johnson graded out really well in that back in the day.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So there are some things there which would make you a little less bullish on Ridley, I would think. But obviously, consistency here is a thing. Falcons have been a good team for years. 9 wins to me sounds about right. I would probably want to go over on that. But how do you feel about the Falcons?
Minus 133 on the over 9 right now. I like the Falcons a lot. I think the continuity plays a big role. Matt Ryan is about as steady as it comes from like just having a quarterback every year. They know what it's like to get to a Super Bowl. I like Freeman. I like Julio Jones. Mohamed Sanu, one of my favorite wide receivers of like people that don't really get talked about. I'm very pro Atlanta, and that doesn't necessarily make me happy, but I like them.
Yeah, I just think they're not sexy, and it helps that we talked through this once already before.
Yeah.
I do agree that there may be some value in that, given the fact that people are like, oh, same old Falcons, same whatever. Julio Jones is maybe a little disappointing last year, so I think there is some opportunity there to just take these steady guys instead of trying to cast your freight with like a team like the Texans, let's say, who we'll talk about later, but projected to make a big jump this year.
Yeah, and I don't expect Tampa to be very good, especially with what they've got going on. At some point in time, Drew Brees is going to age. So I like Atlanta in the NFC South.
Yeah, I think the Falcons look like a pretty good bet there. I don't mind them. I don't mind them from fantasy perspective or a real life perspective. Let's go on to the Baltimore Ravens. 2017, they had 9 wins, a sort of surprising 9 wins given some of the performances they had. 2018, they are projected for 8 wins in Vegas. The Ravens have been pretty quiet this offseason besides adding Lamar Jackson, who is expected to be used in some different gimmicky sets. And obviously, he is breathing a little bit down the neck of Joe Flacco. The Ravens did overhaul their entire wide receiving core, opting for Michael Crabtree, John Brown, and Willie Snead, and trading out Jeremy Maclin, Mike Wallace, and Michael Campanaro. I think the thing that jumps out to me is that Baltimore last year was 7th in the league in defensive yards per play. And they also were very lucky leading the league in takeaways per game with a little over 2 per game. I think there's some regression that's going to happen there. I don't feel particularly inspired by their 2017 performance. I think the fact they got 9 wins was well beyond any expectation. So I don't see them. 8 seems about right. I would be inclined to probably take the under here, though.
Yeah, just barely a little shade to the over 8, minus 119 right now. I'm not the biggest Ravens fan in the world. I don't love that receiving core. I think that everybody is slotted like one spot higher than they probably should be. They're missing like a key guy. And, Flacco doesn't exactly get you excited. Big fan of Lamar Jackson if he can get on the field. And as a former Redskin, or as a current, I guess, Redskins fan, I'd love to see RG3, take over, but that's not going to happen. The big takeaway here for me, though, is the Browns should be better in the North, which should make it a little bit more difficult for teams like the Ravens and the Bengals. So I'd say the 8-8 line looks pretty solid to me.
Yeah, I think it's expecting anything more than that. I think you're hoping that Joe Flacco maybe feels the heat from some of the quarterback play behind him. Maybe there's some growth running back. They did have a pretty good showing last year from Alex Collins, and Buck Allen also did a pretty good job for them. Again, another USC guy. Just keep talking USC for every single team.
Should we get a beer for Sarkisian?
we should not, given that. Well, he did. He actually lost his lawsuit, his wrongful termination lawsuit to USC. So I guess now we can make fun of his drinking problem. No, we can't. Can't do that. On to the Buffalo Bills, another team who, much like the Ravens, seemingly did much better than they should have in 2017 with 9 wins. 2018, Vegas predicting a bit of a drop to 6.5 projected wins. The Bills have traded offensive coordinators, moving from Rick Dennison to Alabama's assistant Brian DeBall, who has been a great tight end coach in the pros. Not much besides that. He was a big part of New England during their 2014 Super Bowl run, and Gronkowski personally felt like he was a great credit to him that year. There is some changeover at QB. Tyrod Taylor out on their way to Cleveland. They added A.J. McCarron and rookie Josh Allen as the most likely starters, not the most impressive group there. We also have some issues with LaShawn McCoy, which have broken this weekend. We'll see how those shake out. Doesn't look great for him. Maybe he could skate, who knows, given they gave Jameis Winston 3 games. The defense was pretty bend but don't break in 2017. They were middle of the pack in terms of yards allowed and they may get a little better there thanks to signing Vontae Davis and their first rounder Tremaine Edmonds. To me, I think 6.5 sounds actually pretty generous for them. They were well coached last year. They achieved more, so I don't want to speak too ill of them. But their 6.5 wins projected for this year would be right in line with their Pythagorean win projection for 2017, which is basically what their win total should have been if you just look at the raw stats. So to me, 6.5, I'd take the under and probably not feel too bad about it.
Yeah, line is off the board on Pinnacle right now, most likely due to that McCoy issue. Negative 57 point differential last year. The fact that they got to 9-7 is spectacular. I prefer Tyrod Taylor to AJ McCarron, so I don't see that as an upgrade. Josh Allen, to me, not ready, particularly when you have weapons like Kelvin Benjamin, who has been all promise and no real substance, in my opinion. Zay Jones is probably naked in some hotel room right now. Only guy I really like on the Bills is Steven Hauschka, and you don't get a lot of like, oh, I really like the kicker type stuff. So I'll pass on the Bills. And if McCoy is out, I'll pass even harder.
I'm sure Steven Hauschka will be busy though. If you are in a fantasy league with a kicker, or like FanDuel has kickers, right, too. So maybe keep your eye on Steven Hauschka.
Who's the punter for the Bills? He'll be busy.
Any guy who's scrawny and has a good leg will be busy on the Bills this year. Everybody else is going to be middling.
Yeah. Shout out to Ray McCold, though. Fun name, Ray.
On to the Carolina Panthers. We're breezing through this today. We're professional broadcasters for this particular video. Yeah, Carolina Panthers. The first time we did this video, it was 45 minutes, and we did like 5 teams. So we're trying to make it work a little better. Great video, though, that the world will never know.
Yeah.
Carolina Panthers, 2017, 11 wins. 2018, they have 9 Vegas projected wins. There's a lot of turnover around the roster. As I mentioned before, they lost their defensive coordinator, replaced him with their defensive line coach, Eric Washington, which actually could be an improvement given that his unit finished 5th against the rush in DVOA, according to Football Outsiders. They also added new offensive coordinator, Norv Turner, and his son, who is not at all receiving nepotism. Mr. Scott Turner is the new QB coach. So there is some hope that the passing game will make some gains. They did lose a couple of guys, Kurt Coleman and Star Lutulele on the defensive side, which make me worry a little bit. They replaced them with Ross Cockrell and Denoris Searcy, who people think can be an asset to the defense, and especially the fact that they were 22nd in the league in passing yards allowed last year. To me, it all comes down to Cam Newton, and we'll probably talk about this a couple times. The QB play is a big deciding factor for some teams. I think his ability to mesh with the Turners, his ability to get the ball to Christian McCaffrey in space. They also have C.J. Anderson, I believe, on the roster now, who's going to be able to do some things with the rushing game, probably comparable to Jonathan Stewart did last year. Overall, it's just a situation where I think Carolina looks good. It's all sort of up to them to kind of take the next step in terms of team construction there.
Under 9 wins, minus 130 right now, which is a little surprising to me. Although, if I like the Falcons, I'll naturally bring down my love for the Panthers. I like the Panthers a lot, and it's not just because I live in North Carolina. They're not my team or anything, but I'm a big Cam Newton fan, mostly because people love to jump all over him, and I think he's really good. I expect a better year out of Christian McCaffrey. I think that he'll get utilized in a more efficient manner. I think there's a way to optimize his style, and it might take a little bit to land on that. The problem is I don't really love the receiving core, but Big Greg is back, and any member of the 7th Floor crew is someone that I'm going to cheer for over and over and over again. So I'll say 9-7 works. The shading on the under 9 kind of scares me a little bit, but I mean they'll go through the season on the back of Cam Newton. If Newton can stay healthy, he'll be fine.
Yeah, I think the only reason I would say maybe the under seems in play is there is some turnover there. There is some changes, and I think there could be a bit of a learning curve for those first few weeks. I feel like they're not coming out firing with the new offense. And it sort of depends. That North Turner did give Minnesota the bones of the offense they had last year, which was so successful. So if he does bring that approach, sure. If Cam kind of is slow to grasp the concepts, or maybe wants to run a little more than the Turner boys would like, then I could see that being an issue that would lead them to maybe make a late run instead of being on the ball early. So I don't mind the under. I would probably, I'd probably take the over though. I think there's enough talent there.
It's another one of those situations where if the starting quarterback goes down, they are in big trouble because Garrett Gilbert is not the answer.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, a slight downgrade from Cam Newton, despite his stupid hats, his monorail
Just a
conductor hats.
skosh.
Chicago Bears, 2017, they have 5 wins. 2018, they are projected to take a bit of a jump to 6.5 wins by Las Vegas. A lot of turnover for the Bears. A new coach, Matt Nagy, coming in, along with Mark Helfrich, fresh out of flaming out in Oregon. They're expected to bring a West Coast / run pass option offense to Chicago, which in theory would benefit Mitch Trubisky and their 24th ranked yards per play offense on the passing game. There's new weapons for Nagy and Helfrich with Allen Robinson and Taylor Gabriel. They also added Super Bowl hero Trey Burton, who is going to be remembered for his big pass, but in reality, he was just a great offensive tight end who did a fantastic job filling in for Zach Ertz when he was hurt a couple times last year. They only lost Cam Meredith on the offensive side of the ball, who is a guy who fantasy players I'm sure will remember from last year, but nobody else, most likely. Trubisky is currently a plus 10,000 bet for NFL MVP, which is right in line with Andy Dalton, AJ Green, and Rob Gronkowski, which is not terrible given the fact he's Mitch Trubisky. And one important note, they did keep defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, who oversaw a defensive unit, which was actually pretty good in passing yards allowed last year. They also kept Prince Amukamara and Kyle Fuller. So to me, I actually don't mind the Bears. I think there is some growth there. I think it depends on what you believe the talent level of Mitch Trubisky is. I like the new coach bounce too. With I think John Fox just didn't have that team's ear as much as he would normally have in a locker room because they weren't close to contending. So I think that's an asset. I'm okay with the 6.5. I'd probably go under, but you could definitely talk me into the over.
Yeah, 6.5 minus 138 to the over, which is surprising to me. I don't like Trubisky at all. I don't really like this team at all. Minus 56 point differential last season got them to 5-11. It is interesting to see that minus 57 got the Bills to 9-7. A couple bounces of the ball could really change the way that your year goes. I'm not confident in Trubisky, and really I'm trying not to disparage the Bears all that much, considering Awesemo.com is based in Chicago. So, I gotta rep the brand a little bit, but I'll pass on the Bears. I see them as the clear worst team in the NFC North.
It's a tough division, but I think they have enough young guys. And, Helfrich has been better as a coordinator than he was as a head coach. And I think there's a lot of positive buzz around Matt Nagy, at least as a personality. I don't mind it. I think that they might be able to combine some of the best parts of Chicago last year and that Chicago smash mouth kind of defense with a little more of an open offense. So I think there's hope there for Chicago, but not this year. I don't think this year they're going to make any noise.
I was going to say Chick-fil-A bet on the 6.5.
No, not that confident in Chicago, but good for the city, good for deep dish pizza.
Yeah, I would love a slice of deep dish pizza right about now.
There's one place, Lou Malnati's in Chicago, also has the best salad I've ever had in my life when I drove cross country moving out here. The salad was amazing. I've never had as good of a salad. I also got a pizza too, but the salad was dope. Everybody recommended it, and it lived up to the hype in a way, which most things do not.
Should I cut that bit of audio out of this when we post it so that people don't know that you're just like, oh, I loved the salad. Oh, thank you for the salad.
Look, I like a good salad. I like any food dish that people can do well and do it in a noteworthy way. And if I drive across the country and I'm amazed by a salad, that says a lot because I just like Chick-fil-A.
I think that says a lot negatively about you, not their food.
I have an open-minded palate. That's just who I am. Cincinnati Bengals, 2017, they had 7 wins. 2018, they are projected for 6.5 wins by Las Vegas. It's a lot more of the same for Cincinnati, who surprisingly kept Marvin Lewis just because they're afraid of change. They also kept offensive coordinator Bill Lazor, who took over partway through last season for Ken Zampese. They also are turning over the defensive reins to Terrell Austin, formerly of the Lions, who has been interviewed for, I think, every coaching job in the NFL, in part because he is a black man who fits the criteria of the Rooney Rule and not so much because of his results allowed. He has a lot of respect in the industry, but he was actually pretty terrible leading the Lions last year. 27th in yards allowed, 26th in passing yards allowed, 19th in rushing yards allowed. The Bengals were better than his Lions were last year. They finished 6th in opponent yards per play. So maybe the talent will be there for him to maximize that it wasn't there on the Lions. I don't know. I just haven't been impressed by Austin in the way that the hype seems to match. There is continuity on the offensive side with only Jeremy Hill leaving. which should free up more snaps for Giovanni Bernard and Joe Nixon. And they're also returning A.J. Green with Brandon LaFell. So the offensive unit sucked last year. It does seem like perhaps they're due for some regression to the mean, where they weren't as terrible the last few years, and the unit's mostly the same. How do you feel about the Bengals?
Oh God, the Bengals. So I seriously, what does Marvin Lewis have on ownership on the Bengals? Like, what kind of dirty past do the owners have that Marvin Lewis was like, yeah, I'm never leaving?
It's definitely like some sort of Pizzagate material, perhaps.
So over 6.5 wins for the Bengals, minus 152. People digging the Bengals. I get it. Like on offense, you know, we had this conversation in the RIP first stream. Bengals offense looks like it'd be really fun to play with in Madden. I like Mixon and Bernard out of the backfield. AJ Green is awesome. John Ross in the slot is a really fun dude. And Tyler Eifert is like, I don't know, one of the 5 best tight ends in football. I like the Bengals a lot on offense. They just seem to be super Bengal-y all the time. And I feel like that's because of Marvin Lewis. They just kind of need... I'm surprised they didn't get rid of him. 7-9 last year. Browns should be better. You know, I see them in that 7, 8, 9 win range again. The ball bounces the right way. They turn into the Bills and they go 9-7 or something. I can see it. I get why the over is there. If Dalton gets hurt, they fall down to Matt Barkley, which, go ahead, you know, I love USC, blah, 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 whatever. Anyway.
He has not converted the best of the pros. I'll give you that.
Yeah, no. I would take the over as well at 6.5, but I don't know if I'd want to pay the minus 152 for it. They look like a much better fantasy team than they do real team.
Yeah, I think it's all going to kind of come down to Andy Dalton, and if he can regain some of the magic he's had in previous years that he clearly did not have last year. I think having the same offensive coordinator, if you do believe Bill Lazor can do it, he was credited for some of Ryan Tannehill's success a couple years ago. I don't know that that's how true that is or not. Given the fact that he's had like 5 jobs, I feel like since then. But overall, I think it kind of comes down to Dalton. Can he push the ball forward? Can John Ross spread the field, given that he has the unreal speed where he's, I think, like a 4.2 40? He should be able to do that. But I think, you know, if they get those things, great. If not, this is going to be a catastrophic year where they're going to be very under. But I'm willing to take the over and ride with it.
Yeah, I'd say that Dalton should sell his soul to be better, but we all know that he doesn't have a soul.
Cleveland Browns, 2017, 0 wins. 2018, they are projected for one of the biggest leaps on the board, 5.5 wins in Las Vegas, which would be roughly an infinity times improvement. I'm not a math guy, but I think if you multiply 0 times anything, it's infinity. So congratulations, infinity and beyond for the Browns. They spent handsomely to get this theoretical achievement, picking up Tyrod Taylor, Carlos Hyde, Darren Fells, and Jarvis Landry in the offseason, along with number 1 overall pick Baker Mayfield and draft sleeper Nick Chubb. They also will be getting a full season of Josh Gordon. Corey Coleman should be healthier. They finished second to last in yards per pass attempt in 2017, where any sort of growth on the talent side should push that forward. Defensively, they were actually pretty competent, finishing 11th in yards allowed per play, 7th overall in rushing yards allowed per game, a spot where you would think they'd be much worse given how much they trailed. Overall, I think that there is some hope there, at least of hitting this total. I don't know about the playoffs. I don't know about them winning the AFC North. I do think that they can maybe at least win a few games and look competent and definitely be fantasy viable.
Oh, God, Browns. Over 5 wins, minus 210 right now. So people are digging it, which is crazy. Hugh Jackson's just super good at not winning. I mean, they can't be worse, obviously. I like Tyrod Taylor as like a placeholder. I don't like the Baker Mayfield pick whatsoever. I think that's a really big time mistake. They had the opportunity to leverage those picks a bit better than they did. Big fan of their backfield as a combination. I like Hyde. I get a Chubb for Chubb. Duke Johnson is solid when he's been on the field. I think they're missing a wideout. If Josh Gordon can stay off the wacky tobacco and stay on the field, like he had this kind of skills that you'd be looking for 6 years ago. Let's see if he still has it now. Jarvis, I don't like having Jarvis Landry as a number 1 when he's like a pretty natural number 2, more of a possession guy. They have to be better. I don't know if I would want to say that they're a 6-win team, because if they are, then naturally one of these AFC North teams are going to be taking a big time step back. I think they're a year away. But, if Tyrod Taylor can stay healthy, I think that they can have like a realistically solid season. Otherwise, they're going to fall off to Baker Mayfield or Drew Stanton, and then they're fucked again.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a Baker Mayfield guy. Some positive signs around him, at least from a narrative standpoint, with I feel like some of the media reporting and his general, I don't know, joie de vivre. He's got like a certain ability to him. I don't think anybody's ever said that about Baker Mayfield, but he's got a certain approach to life, which I don't know, like it could fit a quarterback, an alpha dog quarterback. I don't mind the Jarvis Landry addition as much because I consider that more of like a well-rounded group. I think Coleman's got potential. He's been a pretty good red zone threat. Obviously, Josh Gordon, if he can be, 80% of what he was before all of the weed suspensions, which bullshit, by the way, not something I support. Team Josh Gordon, ride or die. I think if he could be any bit of that, and then you have Landry also coming through the slot and catching 8 or 9 balls a game, I think that's a pretty viable offensive unit. And I agree that the backfield looks great. Carlos Hyde is going to be an improvement. The Chubster, the other Chubster, the lesser Chubster.
I need to get a Nick Chubb jersey.
You definitely do. I agree. I don't know. I think they have a lot of pieces there, which I don't think they're going to be able to make a big run this year. But 6-10 seems possible to me. So I it's a tough over to take a 5.5 win improvement, but I might take it.
I'm just not so sure that grabbing the quarterback from the Bills and the best wideout from the Dolphins is the place you go when you want to make your team better.
Well, you know what
the running back from the 49ers?
The Patriots have been pilfering the AFC East for years, so I mean maybe it'll work for somebody else.
Yeah, I guess.
The Dallas Cowboys, 2017, 9 wins. 2018, 8.5 Vegas projected wins. My favorite team in the world that I've been a fan of since they were 1-15, and Troy Aikman got stretchered out after hit by Lawrence Taylor. And then I was called a bandwagon child for all of the 90s, even though I cried like a little bitch over Troy Aikman's injury in my first game of rooting for the team. That said, they did lose Dez Bryant, another Cowboys legend, maybe legendish player. I don't know if the results
he's
are
probably
there,
the second best wide receiver ever in Cowboys history? Maybe third?
Maybe third, but yeah, I think Alvin Harper is pretty high up there, depending on how you want to.
Alvin Harper, the most balls Alvin Harper caught in Dallas history was like 37 or something stupid.
Different league though. They were very important balls. Anyway,
he just shockingly didn't play as much as people think. I loved him too, but he wasn't. I think I'm remembering this correctly, so now I need to look it up. He shockingly didn't do a lot there. Now I'm thinking of somebody else. I'm wrong. No, I'm right. 36 balls was the most he caught in Dallas.
Well, it's a whole different NFL. Now he'd be catching 9, I'm sure. But anyway, Harper.
He was amazing. People thought he was the dude back then. It's crazy.
It's like Michael Irvin, Alvin Harper, Dez Bryant.
Yeah, I saw that as a tweet a couple years ago, and it really shocked me because I remembered it differently.
Yeah, you remembered it pretty spot on, so good for you. They did keep everybody. They kept Jason Garrett, kept his coordinator, Scott Linehan, and Rod Marinelli. Obviously, the consistency should be a good thing. The wide receiver is not quite as consistent, changing over a few guys there with Bryant out. Alan Hearns coming in from Jacksonville. Deontay Thompson also expected to compete. Rookie Michael Gallup, who seems to have some potential, but we'll see. Obviously, he is a rookie. They also added Tavon Austin, who's probably going to get some carries and also compete with Cole Beasley for slot snaps. And they did lose Jason Witten to Monday Night Football. It's a spot that they're hoping that Rico Gathers, the freak basketball player athlete who's been kind of hyped the last few preseasons, steps up and becomes a starter there. They also drafted rookie Dalton Schultz, who is a player that David Shaw said was the most complete tight end he's ever coached, which is pretty big praise given that he's coached Zach Ertz and Kobe Fleener. Overall, I think one thing also to note, Dallas was 6th best in yards allowed last year, and they added Leighton Vander Esch and should get more snaps from Jalen Smith this year. The defense might actually be a big asset for the Cowboys in a way it hasn't been in previous years. I think the NFC East is going to be tough this year. I don't love the over, but I would probably take it. They still have Zeke, they still have Dak, and I think Dak is going to improve again this year. They added at least talent at wide receiver, whether they can actually do anything, whatever. But I'm okay taking the over for the Cowboys.
You mentioned being a fan remembering Aikman getting carted out. October 10th, 1999. Do you know what happened on that day?
What, did he get carted out there too?
That was the day that Michael Irvin played his last game. He was carted out in
Oh,
Philly. You know who was at that game? This guy.
that was. Were you cheering for it like everybody else was? Because
No,
that
but
was actually what made me hate Philly fans.
I was there with my old man who is a Cowboys fan, and I have never heard. This was at the Vet, so it was 60,000, of the drunkest Philadelphians you can find. I have never heard happiness like I heard when he got hurt. I mean, it took him like 15 minutes to cart him out. They had to do the whole ambulance onto the field type deal. Dion's out praying and stuff, and it was just bedlam. They couldn't have been happy, throwing all sorts of shit at him while he was trying to take the ambulance out. Classic Philly stuff. Anyway,
It was terrible.
Just had to get that in there. You mentioned him getting stretched.
No, it's fair. That was actually like a seminal moment for me of hating Philly fans. I've grown to respect them a little more because I think they're. This is a backhanded compliment. They have so little going in their lives, and they care so much about sports, and I feel like that's really great. And I'm happy for them to get a win. I enjoyed the 76ers last year. I think they're all fucking drunk and idiots, like on par with Boston. But I'm a New Yorker, so I'm not supposed to hate those people.
They did have a prison and they're a jail in the bottom of the Vet, so
They did. They're animals.
Anyway, now I'll show you what kind of an animal I am. Anyway. Dallas, over 8 wins, minus 162. Vegas, a little bit more of a believer than I am. 22 point differential last year, 9-7 season. It all hinges on Dak, really. If he gets hurt, they're in major, major trouble. I'm not sure that another team has a bigger drop-off down to Cooper Rush or Mike White. If Dak isn't on the field, they better hope that Tony Romo's coming in out of the booth, or Jay Cutler stops being on Keeping It Cavallari or whatever the hell that show's called. I don't love Allen Hurns as a 1. I think they're in some trouble from a wideout perspective. This offense scares me. I think not having Witten is scary. I would not take the over, particularly at minus 162. I think when things break right for them, they're going to be... From a health perspective, I mean, I think that they can be a solid team with, playoff aspirations. I think the margin of error is a bit too narrow for them.
I like getting Zeke back. I like the less distractions of him not having to appeal a suspension every week, and they can game plan knowing he'll safely be in there. So I'm okay taking the over. I feel like that's as much of an addition as the idea of Dak staying healthy. Dak's a big bone Texas boy, so I feel like if anybody's gonna stay healthy, it's Dak. At least that would be my hope. Denver Broncos, 2017, they had 5 wins. 2018, they are projected for 7 wins. Their big addition is adding the Minnesota-aided Case Keenum to the roster to replace Trevor Siemian and displace the probably I would say we could call him a bust now, but maybe he'll improve. Paxton Lynch. The defense last year got a lot of bad recognition, I feel like, especially from a fantasy perspective. They were pretty good, though, overall. 3rd in passing yards allowed, 5th in rushing yards allowed, which put them at 1st overall in total yards allowed. They shipped out a possibly regressing Aqib Talib, replaced him with Tremaine Brock, and also got safety help with Sua Cravens. I actually think the defense should be a little better. I mean, it's tough to say how motivated they could be if the offense stalls again and they have to carry the load, because it did seem like that wore on them last year. And the offense does not inspire me. I would say that Case Keenum, I don't buy the hype there. I don't know that Devontae Booker and Royce Freeman are good enough in the backfield. Obviously, Thomas and Sanders are great, but you could sense some frustration with them last year with balls not coming their way. I would probably take the over just because of that defense, but the under would not surprise me.
Over 7 is minus 143. Apparently, Vegas is kind of digging Denver. I'm not a believer in Case Keenum yet. I need to see it a little bit more than once. I think Minnesota's defense was pretty helpful in making Keenum look a little bit better as well. The rest of the offense doesn't really excite me. Not a huge fan of their backfield. I like Demaryius Thomas, but I wonder if last year was just a year where he wasn't what I wanted him to be because they were just kind of a wasteland at quarterback. I'll cheer for Jake Butt because of his name. That's about it. I would take the under on the Broncos if I had to take any side of this. Similarly to what I just said for the Cowboys, if something happens to Case Keenum, I don't think Paxton Lynch is going to lead them to glory.
I would firmly agree with that. Case Keenum, I think did impress me somewhat, but I do feel like the Minnesota offense was designed to give him open throwing windows, and obviously Diggs and Thielen both helped him out a ton, and Jerick McKinnon, to be honest, when Dalvin Cook went out. So I think Keenum at least showed competency. I don't know that I trust the Broncos to get it out of him again, though. So I'm with you on that. I think to me it's a defensive bet. You trust the defense maybe being better, getting some more takeaways this year, and I think it's possible for sure. Detroit, 2017, they had 9 wins. 2018, they're projected for 8 wins by Las Vegas. With a few teams in the North expected to take leaps forward, the Lions would be one who would backslide slightly. In 2018, it looks like they were competent offensively last year with a 13th ranked offense in yards per game. Gave up more yards defensively than they earned, as I mentioned before, with the mediocre Terrell Austin. 27th worst with 356 yards allowed per game. Only getting 337.8 yards for them a game. Not great math. They're adding new coach Matt Patricia, who comes from New England, a unit that he helmed last year, the defensive unit, to 30th ranked in yards allowed, 31st in passing yards allowed, 21st in rushing yards allowed. Matt Patricia would have probably gotten fired if he didn't get this head coaching job. So not the most inspiring thing. They did keep their offensive coordinator and Matt Stafford whisperer Jim Bob Cooter. They lost Eric Ebron, and replaced him with Luke Wilson and Levine Tololo. Not much to love there. Only other big addition offensively is LeGarrette Blount and rookie Kerryon Johnson. That I feel like the Lions have been just trotting out Flotsam at running back for a while now, hoping for the best. I like Matt Stafford. I like his ability to keep them in the game. I don't love the defense. I don't know that I love Patricia's ability to take it over. Maybe he was a victim of sabotage in New England somehow. Who knows? I don't see it. I would go under for the Lions.
Under 8 for the Lions, minus 160 right now. So the public is with you for that one. I'm a bit bigger of a fan of the Lions than I think that. Like, I would happily take plus 134 on the over. I wouldn't love it, but I'm a Fat Matt guy, and they brought in a Fat Matt as a coach, which I think is kind of exciting. Big Golden Tate guy, big Marvin Jones guy. I like the offense. Luke Wilson at tight end is interesting. I'm more of an Owen Wilson guy, so I don't know how well that'll work out. I'm a Lions fan. I'm not a big fan of the Bears. I assume that the Vikings aren't going to go 13-3, although I think they have a better quarterback now than they did before. But 13-3 is that's an all things went right type record. Aaron Rodgers back for the Packers. I see the Lions in that 8-8 range. And again, does the ball bounce the right way to put yourself in a situation where you can maybe look at a wild card.
Okay. I can allow that. I think if you have a quarterback like Stafford who's so volatile, he's either going to throw you into the game or maybe throw you out of it. And he's throwing people, he is throwing them out of games much less each year. Yeah. So I'm with you on it. I think that's a spot where you could attack.
Yeah, if they're down 10 or something in the fourth quarter, you're not excited to have Stafford just slinging and getting it up like 60 times. Something breaks free and all of a sudden it's touchdown Golden Tate and they're only down 3.
Yeah, I think I could see it. I think the offense would have to carry him, though. That defense is not good, and they're going against some teams in the NFC North who are going to have more explosive offenses this year, including the next team, the Green Bay Packers. 2017, they had 7 wins, a sort of injury-addled year where they didn't bring back Aaron Rodgers and maybe could have made a run if they had. It was sort of a dicey thing there. 2018, they're projected for 10 wins by Vegas, so a pretty big step forward, second only to the Browns so far. In 2017, they were 26th in offensive yards per game, where they were actually pretty competent on the running side with Ty Montgomery and Aaron Jones. They were 4th ranked in yards per attempt rushing the ball and terrible passing the ball last year, 30th ranked with 5.6 yards per pass attempt. 2 big coaching changes for the Packers. They bring on board a new defensive coordinator and Mike Pettin, who last year their defense was pretty terrible. Pettin also has been not a noteworthy coach, despite coaching the Browns to, I think, another, a 1-15 year, 1-16, who even knows. On the offensive side, though, I actually think the addition was much better. They added Joe Philbin back from the Colts and is obviously his failed coaching stint in the Dolphins. Last time that Joe Philbin had Aaron Rodgers as quarterback as the offensive coordinator, the Packers led the NFL with 8.7 yards per pass attempt back in 2011. Rodgers is currently the favorite for MVP with a plus 550 shot to win. They also added Jimmy Graham and Mercedes Lewis, which will be the best, I would say, red zone threats that Aaron Rodgers has ever had. Everything here looks great to me except that defense. I don't know that I believe Pet can get it on track, but I like the offense. I think the offense is going to be a juggernaut this year, so I'm okay with the over.
Over is plus 113 right now. Under 10 wins, minus 135. I generally agree with that. I think you're more likely to push at that 10 number. I mean,
Sure.
it's all Aaron Rodgers, right? Like if you know Aaron Rodgers plays 16 games, you assume they're gonna win 10 games and be in the playoff hunt. If something happens to Aaron Rodgers, they're dead in the water. Deshaun Kaiser is not gonna roll in here and be like, "Oh, now I'm good." So it's all Rodgers, and I have no reason to suspect that Rodgers won't be healthy. So I'll happily assume that the Packers are going to be a 10-win team and in the hunt for a wild card, if not, an NFC North title.
Yeah, I imagine them going sort of neck and neck with Minnesota, who we'll talk about later, obviously. But I think that they're going to be around the 11 to 13 win range, and I think the Packers will also. And I think the other two teams, I don't know where they're going to get all those wins, but I feel like they're both kind of heads and shoulders above the other two. So yeah, I'm okay with the over.
Minnesota plus 500 to win the NFC. Packers plus 700. Just FYI.
Interesting. I would actually probably agree with that. It's going to come down to the quarterback spot. And Kirk Cousins versus Rodgers is a much closer battle than Case Keenum versus Rodgers. So I'm curious to see how that.
I would agree.
Houston Texans, another big jump ahead of us. 2017, they had 4 wins. 2018, they projected for 8.5 wins by Las Vegas. They're expected to have Deshaun Watson, their star QB last year, who went down with a knee injury. They'll have him back supposedly for training camp. They attempted to shore up the offensive line with some additions: Chantrell Henderson, Senio Clemente, and Zach Fulton. Not top line moves, but moves that should give them some depth and some flexibility. They also added the competent Steelers fill-in Sammy Coates to their wide receiver core of DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller. Very explosive group. Sammy Coates was pretty good last year filling in. Tight end's a big question mark for me. C.J. Fedorowicz retired due to concussions. Steven Anderson and rookie Jordan Akins are expected to fill in. I need to see those guys before I take any belief in them. Fedorowicz was a pretty sneaky play last year. Very undervalued tight end. The defense makes one big addition with Tyrann Mathieu, another big hitter and defensive QB in the backfield, which should help a defense which was injured last year. And despite their talent, finished only 20th in yards allowed last year, 23rd via DVOA, according to Football Outsiders. It seems like a steep jump. I'm okay with it, though. I mean, I believe Deshaun Watson can get back. I think a full year of him would be great. I like the talent on offense. The defense obviously has a ton of talent that needs to congeal and get better more. I'm okay with the over here.
Love the under. Over is minus 149, however. I'm not trusting Watson just yet. It's a big injury to come back from very quickly. Not the biggest Lamar Miller fan in the world. Outside of DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, I guess I like Will Fuller, but I'm not a huge fan of this offense. I'm nervous about Watson. The fall off to Brandon Weeden is comically far. And the Texans gave up more points than any other team in football last year. I don't know why we suddenly expect that to get that much better. I understand. Injuries happened. They gave up the most points. Not they were 20th. That's a big time leap. A lot of stuff needs to go right, and they absolutely have to keep Watson healthy for the entire season. Every start you give Brandon Weeden is a bad, bad, bad start. I would happily take under 8.5.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that does worry me a little is I do feel like a public bet of, oh yeah, they're gonna somehow move up the food chain and they're gonna be the team to watch. And I do feel like a team like that who has that kind of buzz underneath them does tend to underperform. So that worries me a little bit. So much talent though, it's got to come together better this year, I would hope. And again, the quarterback play, another big deciding factor. If Deshaun Watson looks pretty close to what he was, and he can both pass the ball and run the ball, that's a crazy weapon to add to this offense and almost makes up for Lamar Miller's mediocrity. So I could take the over, but I could see your logic in fading it as well.
Yeah, just next year's the year for those guys.
It's fair. Indianapolis Colts, 2017, 4 wins. 2018, they're projected for 6.5 wins by Las Vegas. Last year, obviously, without Andrew Luck, they rode a 31st in yards per game offense, 29th in yards per game defense, to 4 wins, a total that seems like it should have been higher, or rather seems higher than it should have been. and also according to their Pythagorean win total was a little higher than it should have been. But Andrew Luck alone could make up the difference. Obviously, they have some additions as well. Eric Ebron at tight end, Ryan Grant, nothing too inspiring. The biggest addition is new head coach Frank Reich coming in for the cold feet on wedding day, Josh McDaniels. Frank Reich, obviously a guy who was credited a lot for heading the Eagles offense to the fourth best yards per game last year. Also credited for growing Carson Wentz, Nick Foles being a competent player. There's a lot to like about the addition of Frank Reich, even though he was a second choice. Marlon Mack, also a guy I feel like is primed to break out this year just by opportunity. He's pretty much the only running back there who has any sort of competency and has shown any sort of flashes. And lastly, Luck is a plus 2,500 bet to win MVP, which would put him in line with Fat Matt Stafford and the perennial public favorite, Handsome Jimmy Garoppolo. For those two poor guys got such divergent nicknames. But, a healthy Andrew Luck, I feel like decides this entirely. I still might take the under. I don't know that I believe in the overall talent level there, so I would go under 6.5.
Yeah, over 6 is at 187 right now on Pinnacle. Man, that scares me. Like I like Luck. If he's healthy, that makes this Colts team significantly better, obviously. And I think that Brissett is a capable backup. Problem is, they still sucked last year. And outside of Eric Ebron, it's not like they did anything to really make themselves a lot better. Frank Reich's better known as the guy who had the big comeback in Buffalo, or the guy that was an amazing backup quarterback in Tecmo Super Bowl. He's my dude. I took Jim Kelly right out of that shit. Had the best loft of the ball, just bombing that stuff to Andre Reed. Shout out Kutztown University.
That's all right. I do remember that play. Andre Reed was a favorite of mine. I didn't remember the Frank Reich component.
Went to my alma mater.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, just had to go on a little Frank Reich tangent there. He was my dude. I don't like this team whatsoever. I would not take the over, particularly at minus 187. You would have to know that you'd have to know that Luck plays all 16, and I don't even know if that matters because they were bad for reasons other than just quarterback play last year.
I would like to see him throw in training camp before making an official diagnosis, but I do feel like the under is the safer move and probably the more logical move because, the talent's not there. A great quarterback can add, who knows how many wins, and I feel like we're going to debate that point a lot throughout this video. But, yeah, I'm with you. The under seems like the move for the Colts this year. Jacksonville is another surprise team from last year. 2017, they had 10 wins. 2018, down to 9 Vegas projected wins. The Jaguars kept just about everyone of consequence on defense. Added a few nice pieces offensively, even though they also lost a few there with Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns leaving as well. The Jaguars, though, do seem like a team, to me, who's capable of beating Vegas. They probably got a little lucky with their takeaways last year because that is sort of a randomness stat. However, the offense was pretty good last year. The defense was historically good in some respects, though actually not that great in rushing yards allowed per game. So that's something to note that they can improve on and maybe be even better this year. I don't know. I think that they also added Andrew Norwell to the team, an offensive lineman who signed the richest contract ever at guard. Just another reason to like that offense improving more, to like Leonard Fournette, who was already a rock last year, to maybe even like Blake Bortles, who is, I would say, a beloved figure in part because of his incompetence and also being on the good place. I think overall the Jaguars look good to me. I feel like they're getting a little disrespect with the total going down. I buy in. I think they could do it again.
Yeah, I like the Jags. Tied for third, best point differential last year. Big Fournette fan. I hope that he could stay on the field. I wish the wide receiver talent was a little bit better, but I'll take my chances there. The defense is absolutely loaded. I love Austin Seferian-Jenkins. I think that's a really nice move for Jacksonville. I see no reason that they tumble over 9 wins, minus 124. I fully expect them to be right around that 10-6 that they had last year. They're my odds-on favorite for the AFC South. I guess the Titans would be the only other option because I don't see the Colts and Texans challenging them. I'm on Team Jags, man. That defense is legit.
I agree. I think they were pretty close. I mean, they were pretty close until Tom Brady just completely smoked them last year to winning the AFC. I think with that defense, they'll be competitive again, and any sort of growth they have offensively is just added bonus. So I'm with you. I think the Jaguars are a team to watch this year, and I'm very okay with the over. Kansas City, another team with turnover. 2017, they have 10 wins. 2018, they have 8.5 Vegas projected wins. The big change is coming in the form of Patrick Mahomes replacing the occasionally accused of being too conservative Alex Smith, though he had a great fantasy year last year. Pat Mahomes is known as more of a gunslinger. He is going to ride plus 5,000 MVP odds into the season. Obviously, those will fluctuate throughout time, but they are up substantially from where they were at the beginning of the year at plus 10,000. His plus 5,000 odds put him in line with guys like Antonio Brown, Ezekiel Elliott, and his teammate Kareem Hunt. The Chiefs also bring in Sammy Watkins to add to the offensive group, which is already pretty explosive with just Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. To me, I think that it's obviously going to come down to QB play again. This is a recurring theme of the video. I believe in Mahomes. I think Mahomes can keep them in the hunt. That said, getting over 8.5 seems tough to me. I would slot him more at 7 and 9, 8 and 8. I'm okay with it. I think they're going to be fantasy viable. I'll probably try to draft Pat Mahomes, but besides that, I'm taking the under.
Over 8, minus 158.
Wow. That's a big cosign on Mahomes.
Yeah. Look, the backfield is probably the best in football. Combination of Kareem Hunt, Charkandrick West, and Spencer Ware. Anytime anybody gets injured, that next guy up is immediately like a top waiver wire claim and an RB1 every week. So love all those guys. Hard to not like Tyreek Hill. Sammy Watkins, you have to assume if he's ever going to break out with all of the weapons here, I think this would be the spot. Travis Kelce, exceptional tight end. It's all about what you think of Mahomes. I'm a little nervous here. I think that having the steady play of Alex Smith in the regular season is an asset that's hard to be replaced. Mahomes just going in there. I think the highs will be higher and the lows will be lower. I really hate like everything in the AFC West, so I'm not sure where I land. I don't necessarily like the under 8, but I think like 9 and 7 looks a little bit more feasible. I wouldn't want to pay the juice on the over 8.
Yeah, I would agree with it. The resounding, I also think too, one thing to note, some of these totals the win totals have changed a little as Josh is referencing them. Just because I put these together earlier in the week, or finalized them rather earlier in the week, and obviously Vegas fluctuates.
Yeah, different websites too.
So yeah, overall, I think I agree with you. I think that there is the Vegas believing in Mahomes definitely makes me feel a little better about that. And I think the one thing also to note, defensively, they were pretty terrible last year. So I think they're going to be a team to target on both sides. Where if you're going up against them, it's going to be a lot of ball. It's going to be a lot of balls flying around and a lot of fantasy points to find.
Quick production question. Is it weird if I go fill my water while you do your intro and talk for the Chargers?
No, you can pull that off, I think.
Perfect.
I can't see you when you get back, though, but that's
I'll
the one issue.
just start talking. We'll be good.
Okay.
The Chargers.
Chargers, next up, another AFC West team. 2017, they had 9 wins. 2018, they're projected for 9.5 wins by Las Vegas. They were a bit of a comedy of errors in the first part of their 2017 year, going 0-4 to open the season with just a bunch of clusterfucky situations. They did rally to a 9-7 record thanks to an offense that was 4th in the league in yards per play, 3rd in yards per pass attempt, and in the middle of the pack in opposing yards per game, but also helped out greatly by a number 2 ranked passing defense that also finished top 10 in DVOA according to Football Outsiders. Their Pythagorean win expectation was 11.5, so they underperformed that last year. That's something that makes me think they look pretty good this year to achieve more than they did in 2017. Also, one thing to note, they did bring in Mike Pouncey, another big addition to that offensive line who has needed big additions before. Overall, to me, I think the Chargers look like a really strong team. I worry a little bit about them losing Hunter Henry to an ACL tear. They also have not re-signed Antonio Gates yet, so the tight end position is a little bit fungible for them right now, maybe waiting for a training camp cut or something. I would take the over, and I don't think those concerns aren't enough for me to get off of the Chargers and how they were really good last year and just kind of underperformed.
Yeah, positive 83-point differential last year, 9-7. The over 9 is minus 154. I'm gonna be pessimistic here. This is a team that cannot stop getting in their own way, and I need to see them do it before I just back them. They stand out. Like, I mean, the Hunter Henry injury is a big deal. I
Mm.
love Phillip Rivers. I don't think that he gets enough credit. He just happens to be shadowed by Roethlisberger and Eli from that draft class. I like Melvin Gordon. I mean, Keenan Allen's exceptional when he's on the field, but how confident can you be that he's going to be there the entire time? I see the downside more for this team than the upside. Phillip Rivers is getting old, and if something finally happens to Rivers and he's not on the field, I'm not confident in Cardale Jones or Geno Smith. I see
Geno
more
Smith,
downside in the Chargers than upside.
yeah, I do feel like they are another public team who's probably going to be a favorite to make some noise. That, again, that gives me pause. I always try to fade the public when you can. But I think there's enough talent there. I think offensively, where even losing Hunter Henry, they have so many guys at wide receiver who did fill in pretty capably. I think they run the ball well. I think Pouncey is going to be a big addition for them, being able to run the ball and pass protect better and adjust better. So overall, to me, I think there's enough there to go with it. But I could see your reservations there. I mean, there's enough to point to, which could be an issue. To me, though, they're a dark horse for the AFC, I think.
Yeah, again, like if they could get out, I don't know what their schedule looks like for 2018, but they could get out of the gates early, and if they can bank some wins, that'll be better for them down the line. Normally, they're, like they need to prove that they can win a close game.
That's true. But they do say that there's a degree of randomness as well. So maybe they're just due. They do open the year with, let's see, the Chiefs, the 49ers. Actually, no, it's preseason, my bad. They open the year with the Chiefs, the Bills, the Rams, the 49ers, the Raiders, the Browns. Not a bit of a tough opener there with the Chiefs. Well, that first game, though, I can tell you I'm going to be rostering in week one. Chiefs Chargers. Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
That's fun.
That could be explosive. But yeah, I think you're right. They need to get off to a hot start and maybe shake some of those ghosts from last year. So I could see that. Let's see. On to the Los Angeles Rams. They're pals in Los Angeles who stole a lot of the Chargers' thunder last year as the new kid in town. The Rams won 11 games, a surprising playoff participant in 2017. 2018, they're projected for 9.5 wins in Las Vegas. They're obviously coach Sean McVay returns. They did lose some guys on the offensive side of the ball on the coaching staff, but obviously McVay is the guy who makes that engine hum. Jared Goff, a surprising 7th favorite to win the NFL MVP at plus 1,600 odds. It's a little unfair that he is heavily coached by Sean McVay, and I feel like the MVP award would not be shared with Sean McVay. But I think that him being reflected that highly in the MVP odds makes me feel pretty good about Jared Goff. Defensively, too, a lot of big pieces added for the Rams. Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters, and Ndamukong Suh all coming in. Offensively as well, they added Brandon Cooks to replace Sammy Watkins. He'll be paired with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods to make a pretty potent little wide receiving trio who Sean McVay has been really good at getting into open space. Fantasy-wise, I would worry a little bit about Todd Gurley just because there's so many more mouths to feed, but he looks good as well. To me, I think the Rams, I could see why people might think they're a fluke. I think the numbers back out them not being a fluke. I would take the over, even at 9.5.
9.5 over minus 157. So money's coming in on that over. I could see a step back, but they've got a lot of good young talent, and if that grows the way you want it to, they're in great shape. I mean, it's hard to not like Goff after last year. Todd Gurley's top 5 running back in the league, right?
Yeah,
I think that's a pretty
definitely
safe statement.
Mm-hmm.
I like Brandon Cooks a lot. I'd like to see how he does for LA. I just naturally get nervous about teams that pop up like this the year before. But I don't really have any reason to suspect it wasn't real last year. 149, positive 149 point differential, tied for third. Like, it's not like I don't really think they got there on smoke and mirrors. So while I like the over, I wouldn't bet the minus 157. I think the Rams are the clear best team in the West.
Yeah, the one thing that I feel like they have working in their favor with their resurgence, it's so heavily based on Sean McVay and how he handled the pre-snap calls. and that's not going to go away. So even if the defenses adjust to a certain degree, McVay is still going to be making the call at the line, and he proved he was really good at that. So I think, to me, like, I do believe in the young coach who's a genius. I mean, that's obviously been a dicey proposition in the past in the NFL with a lot of one-year wonders, Chip Kelly. But otherwise, I think that there's enough there, and the talent. I mean, they added so much talent. It's hard for me to see it, but they do have a little bit of a dream team Eagles year vibe, where like maybe they added a few too many guys, and you lose a little bit of what your identity is.
FYI, we're at an hour.
I noticed that, and so we're ahead of pace of the first video
by a lot.
Yeah, so we're doing it. All right, let's keep it moving. On to Miami. Is there any way to confirm, by the way, the video's recording and safe?
We're fine.
Okay, cool. Miami, 2017, 6 wins. 2018 projected for 6.5 Vegas wins. Surprising to me. They lost a lot of key pieces. Mike Pouncey and Ndamukong Suh, Jarvis Landry, all guys we talked about before. They brought in guard Josh Sitton. They brought in Frank Gore. They brought in Danny Amendola and Albert Wilson. A lot of just fucking flotsam. I get the Amendola signing was a big deal to them. Not a guy who I'm necessarily pinning my hopes on. One thing also to note, they have a new offensive coordinator in Dwell Loggins, who brings an 11th ranked run offense he helmed in Chicago to Miami. On the downside, NFL experts dubbed him the worst play caller in the league. So that's a bit of a trade-off there. They do get Ryan Tannehill back, though. I feel like that alone maybe is worth the half win to some circles. I don't know. I don't love them. I don't love the win total. I would probably think they're a 5-win team. I'm going under.
Over 6.5, minus 127. So, six to 7 wins is exactly what they're expecting. Let's see Ryan Tannehill stay on the field, because if not, they're falling off to Brock Osweiler or Bryce Petty. So that's shitty. Frank Gore, at some point in time, that dude needs to age. I feel like he's had the same season over and over again for a decade. He's just weird. I can't figure it out. Crazy long career. I don't mind them losing Landry all that much. I don't think that having a guy that's just a really good possession receiver is any great shakes on a 6-10 team. That said, I don't find the Dolphins to be terribly appealing. I would probably take the under 6.5 if forced to choose. I don't even see like what a best case scenario would be for them this year. They're just not good.
I feel like a feisty 8-8, I think, is the best they can hope for, and even then, I just don't see it.
I mean, they need the Bills' luck from last year to do that, right?
Yeah, pretty much. The coaching, I don't think, is there either. I'm not a big Adam Gase believer personally, at least as a head coach. But hey, we'll see. Miami Dolphins. You get the most unenthusiastic breakdown so far.
I mean, they're just like unsexy. They weren't like super, super, super bad last year. They're just irrelevant.
I agree, and I think losing Suh is a big deal with the run defense. They were pretty middle of the pack on defense last year, but I think having a big run stopper who will also step on people's groins and eyeballs does affect how an offense attacks you. So I just don't love it overall. Not a big Miami Dolphins
I'm a huge Suh fan too.
He plays with an intensity that can help, and I feel like the Rams certainly will need that this year if they want to take the leap.
I used him a lot in NCAA football the year he was a senior or junior or whenever he came out.
He was very elite then. Now a little bit less so, but still noteworthy. Minnesota, 2017, they had 13 wins. 2018, Vegas projected them for 10 wins. They were a surprise real-life and fantasy juggernaut last year thanks to a top 10 offense and a top 2 defense that limited rushing yards and passing yards, but without getting a ton of turnovers forced. So if anything, luck might be more on their side this year. Big upgrade to me going from Case Keenum to Kirk Cousins. I don't know what the smart football mind would think about Kirk Cousins. Maybe there's some advanced analytics that don't back up. He slings the ball, though. This Vikings offense getting a guy with a better arm who can sling the ball and do it more accurately, to me, is going to be a big upgrade. They tried to shore up some weak spots with bringing in a guard and Tom Compton. They also brought in former Titan Kendall Wright to help add a little more depth to the wide receiving core. Turnover on offensive line worries me a little bit. The loss of Pat Shurmur as well is a bit worrisome. And they are bringing in, though, John DeFilippo to fill him in at offensive coordinator, who is a guy who was a big part of the Philadelphia offense as QB coach. And Philadelphia averaged the same yards per pass attempt as Minnesota did last year. So maybe it's a lateral move. I don't know. They get Dalvin Cook back. And one thing too, added Sheldon Richardson, who's a nasty defensive player who's going to help them as well. And they were already sixth against the rush in DVOA last year. I love Minnesota. Like, I think they're a million times better than they were last year. I don't think they're going to need as much luck as they had with the whole miracle thing. They would be one of my favorites to win the NFC. To be honest, I like them a lot. Over.
Minnesota over under 10 is essentially equal. -107 on the over, -111 on the under. I think that's a good number. It's hard to separate much without just getting the right bounces of the ball. Like 13-3 is hard to do from a talent perspective. Everything went right for them to go 13-3. I do think Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback than
Case
Keenum, Jesus. I think Kirk Cousins is assuredly a better quarterback. The problem is you can't just say, I think he's better, so the Vikings should be better, because Keenum had an exceptional year last year. So compared to last year's Case Keenum, I don't think Cousins will have a better year than that, even if I do think that he has a better talent level. That said, Vikings defense is nasty. I have no reason to suspect that they aren't the favorite to win the NFC North outside of a healthy Aaron Rodgers just going ham on the division. I like the Vikings. Would it shock me if they won the Super Bowl? Absolutely not. Would it shock me if they got dumped in Wild Card Weekend? Absolutely not.
I think the important thing to me is they're going to be in the mix for the playoffs. They're going to be in the mix for the NFC North crown. And I think I like Kirk Cousins more than you do. I get what you're saying with Case Keenum, and he might be a system quarterback who achieved what Kirk Cousins would in the same system. But I think when it comes to the big games, you want a guy like Cousins who has the big arm and isn't afraid of throwing in a tight spots and stuff like that. And to me, I think that's an improvement. And again, they just added more talent to a team who didn't really need a lot more talent. So I'm okay with the over, and I like them a lot in general. New England, 2017, 13 wins. 2018, 11 wins projected in Las Vegas. So another one of those best case years in 2017, which we've learned via media reports, perhaps not that great behind the scenes as it seemed. They've had kind of a tumultuous offseason with retirement rumors for Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski. Obviously, they lost Matt Patricia, which, as I mentioned above, maybe not that big of a loss. And they almost lost Josh McDaniels before keeping him at the last minute and completely screwing over the Colts in a press conference they had planned. But that's the old Patriots for you. They actually don't have a new defensive coordinator, which is a Patriots move, of course. They did the same thing with Matt Patricia. He was not the defensive coordinator at first. He had to earn the title. It'll be linebackers coach Brian Flores making the calls this year. Possibly some more involvement by Bill Belichick, which I think would be a net positive. Overall, to me, I think they lost a lot of talent. I think they are the Patriots. They added guys who were cheap, like Jeremy Hill, Jordan Matthews, Cordero Patterson, Kenny Britt. They also brought in Sony Michel, who's got some hype as being a Deion Lewis, but stronger and possibly better. I don't know. I think they're the Patriots. I have a hard time doubting them. I'd probably take the over and not feel bad about it. But at some point, this has to end. And the signs are as bad as they've ever been about this Patriots dynasty coming to an end.
Over 11, -131. Look, the rest of the AFC East sucks. There's no reason that the Patriots don't win the AFC East in a landslide. Only reason that doesn't happen is if Brady gets hurt or he wants to keep making out with his son every day.
Sorry, guys, can't win today. Too busy making out with my son.
Yeah. I fully expect Gronk to just be crushing beers and doing Gronk shit. Look, it's the Patriots. You're in no position to say anything until they stop doing it, and they just keep doing it over and over and over again. So, much like assuming LeBron James is going to be in the NBA Finals every year, I just assume that Tom Brady and the Patriots are going to be in at least the AFC title game every single year. I don't want to pay -131 on the over, but I'd bet whatever I could on Patriots to win the AFC East.
Yeah, I agree. One thing to note, too, which I didn't say in the initial part, they also lost Nate Solder and Cameron Fleming, two useful. I mean, Solder, a very good offensive lineman, Fleming, a useful one. It worries me a little. Like, you're giving Brady less protection, lesser talent on both sides of the ball. He could still do it, but it's like they're playing with a degree of difficulty almost for him, and I don't love that part of it. But as Josh said, until they don't do it, I don't see any reason to question them. So I would take the over.
5th best scoring defense last year, just FYI. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, despite how terrible, that's really impressive. They're like fucking wizards. That's what they are. Just dark magic wizards.
One of 5 teams under 300 total points.
Crazy. Wow. All right. Good for them. New Orleans Saints, 2017, 11 wins. 2018 projected for 9.5 wins by Las Vegas. They had a strong 2017 campaign and are returning most of their key components. The emergence of Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara were very big moments for them. They brought back Benjamin Watson to replace Kobe Fleener. They've signed Cam Meredith, and we'll hope Austin Carr can fill in for Willie Snead leaving. Not that Willie Snead was that important, but he did get snaps out of the slot. To me, it all comes down to Kamara, comes down to regression. Is Kamara going to regress? Is Ingram going to regress? Is there maybe going to be some tumult after they do have to share this load? And Ingram seems to want it for himself. And Kamara, obviously, if he keeps getting better, is going to want more of himself. I don't know. I like them. The defense doesn't impress me, and the offense feels due for regression. I would probably take the under at 9.5.
Is Drew Brees still doing that Ponzi scheme?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Google Drew Brees Advocare and then read that big article about how he's the face of a sham company. Anyway, it's all Drew Brees, right? If something goes wrong for Drew Brees and they have to go to Macho Man Tom Savage, they're screwed. Over 9 wins for the Saints, minus 173. So Vegas, big time believers in the Saints. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, Kamara and Ingram were both exceptional last year. Drew Brees is going to make everybody look better, but I mean, Father Time is not on his side. I would be much more likely to take the under 9 if I had to make the bet. When that falls off, I think it's going to fall off dramatically. Sort of like when Peyton Manning couldn't make a throw anymore, but they just kept trotting him out because they had the best defense in football. I think when it goes for Brees, it's going to go. And as like a little dude, that could go quicker than you would like to think. How old is Brees now? 38, 39?
I think it's 38.
He'll be 39. January 15th, 1979. He's 39 and 178 days. So he'll turn 40 this season if he's in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's about right. That's crazy.
Must be eating all that Advocare shit.
One thing to note, by the way, if you are watching this video along with the column, or if you're watching on YouTube, there's a highlight which I have in the column, which I think is worth noting of Kamara, which he breaks a play but gets very close to falling down, somehow stays on his feet and keeps going. I think if you watch a lot of his highlight reel plays, they're all very similar. The question becomes to me, is that a skill of his or is he just lucky? And I think I worry a little bit about the luck and just the regression kind of hitting him. I like him. I think he's great, but that scares me a little because Kamara really bailed him out a lot of times last year. For the total I have at 9.5, I think I'm okay with the under at 9. It gets a little dicier, but yeah, I think either way they're in that 8 to 10 range regardless.
Yeah, agreed.
New York Giants, another team with a lot of big changes. 2017, 3 wins. 2018, 6.5 Vegas projected wins. They bring in a new coach, Pat Shurmur, who is largely credited for the success of the Minnesota offense last year, though there was some involvement of North Turner before he left. Shurmur will hopefully get a lot more out of Eli Manning. Also, top draft selection, Saquon Barkley is a plus 5,000 MVP pick, along with Jonathan Stewart being added. Eli Manning, a shocking plus 3,300 MVP pick. But there are the weapons there. Odell Beckham, Sterling Shepard. They'll add Cody Latimer, who is a sort of hype prospect from the Broncos system that didn't really do a ton. They also add Nate Solder to the offensive line, so a little protection for him. Defensively, a new coordinator as well. Bringing on board James Betcher from Arizona, a spot where he actually helmed a pretty banged up and just not that great unit to a middle of the pack ranking. From a DVOA perspective, though, the Cardinals were actually much better, 10th against the pass and 1st against the run, according to Football Outsiders. So Betcher may actually be a sneaky little pickup there. I like the move. I think they made some big additions on both sides of the ball. I'm okay with this total. The over 6.5 is tough, but the Giants always do this shit where they go they're going to go 9-7 this year and make the Super Bowl. I feel like it's not impossible for the stupid Giants. I'm taking the over.
Over 6.5, minus 167, which
wow, that is a lot of juice.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass there. Oddly enough, Big Barkley fan. I mean, I think he's going to be super dynamic in the NFL. Beckham, if he can keep his head on straight, is a top 5 wide receiver in football. But it's Eli Manning, man. Why do we expect this to be any different? He's been atrocious for a long time now. I mean, when was his last good year?
It wasn't last. He did it, but even last year he had moments. I do remember he had one game in particular where, from a DFS perspective, where he won like the the million maker or whatever, millionaire maker, and he was just good. But I think he needed more protection. I think he needed more weapons who can get open in space and health, obviously, for the wide receivers with Beckham being hurt and banged up most of the year. I think they can do it. I just think they can do it. I believe in everything they kind of have going. I hate it. I hate the Giants so much, but I think that they actually might make the playoffs this year. It wouldn't surprise me.
He's going to be 37. They went 11-5 in 2016 in spite of him. 26 TDs, 16 interceptions, super low adjusted net yards per attempt. Last time they were above 500 was 2012. Before that, this is not a good Eli Manning anymore. And I don't really think Davis Webb is the answer if they want to go that direction. I would happily take that under. Under 6.5 plus 139. I'm in. I'm absolutely 100% in. Eagles are still going to be good. Cowboys should be as good or better. And I like Alex Smith on the Redskins just as much as I liked Cousins. I'll pass on the Giants this year.
I get what you're saying from a bet perspective. I just like talent. I like Barkley. I do think Eli can do enough. I mean, again, is current Eli better than current Case Keenum or 2017 Case Keenum? I think he is. And I think if you believe in Shermer as a QB whisperer, you believe in his ability to kind of bring the best parts of Minnesota over, then I think that's why you go with the Giants. And they just have a way of doing this every year where people count them out and then boom, they're back in the hunt again.
What drugs did you smoke while I filled my water?
Look, I've liked the Giants a lot. I actually am very excited to play with them in Madden because that team is going to be, I mean, Evan Ingram at tight end, another year of improvement for him. Just a big dude who catches every ball. Was great last year despite them being terrible and Eli being mostly not great. And you add in a great offensive mind. You add in some better line play. You add in an elite running back who can catch and run. Saquon Barkley, a guy who destroyed USC in the Rose Bowl and didn't win, but did destroy USC in the Rose Bowl. And I remember that, and he was scary that day. I like this team. I think they have a lot of good pieces, but Eli though.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Okay, that's fair. Staying in New York for the Jets, 2017, 5 wins. 2018, 6 Vegas projected wins. The Jets are bringing new faces into the roster, but not much changing in the coaching world. Jeremy Bates was promoted to offensive coordinator after serving as QB coach in 2017, in which he did a pretty competent job bringing Josh McCown along in that offense. Josh McCown, another sort of sneaky fantasy play last year. They added Isaiah Crowell, another big banger in the backfield. We'll add him to what's his face? I didn't write it down.
Bilal Powell?
Yeah, Bilal Powell. He's still on the roster. He was pretty good last year as well. He'll be in the mix as well with Crowell. They're also bringing Terrell Pryor into the wide receiver group, so wasn't great for the Redskins last year. I'm inclined to think that was more of a Washington situation than a talent on his end situation, but I guess we'll find out this year as a tiebreaker. They lost a lot defensively, lost Muhammad Wilkerson, Demario Davis, and Coney Ely. They're going to bring in Tremaine Johnson from the Rams, who's a pretty play in the secondary. Tremendous player with pass deflections last year. I think the defense, I don't think it's a break even, but they were top 4 last year in yards allowed. I think they're probably going to get a little closer to the middle of the pack this year with some of those losses, Wilkerson in particular. To me, 6 wins sounds about right. I don't see much more than that. I don't see much less than that.
Under 6 wins, minus 130 right now. The Jets are dookie, man. Real bad. This is another team where I would expect all 3 quarterbacks to play at some point in time. Mm-hmm. Josh McCown's Josh McCown. He's like the ultimate replacement level quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater's leg exploded 2 years ago, so it'll be interesting to see how he works himself back. I really liked Sam Darnold. I thought he should have been the first pick in the draft. I'm surprised you didn't like super tug him off on that original
No,
walkthrough.
I don't think he's going to get enough playing time this year, but obviously I agree. I think he's a pretty good player. He was such a bonehead at USC with some of the plays he made, and that worries me on a pro level if he's not, because he was turning the ball over so many times in spots where it's like, what are you doing? Don't force that. And that's the worst habit to bring into the NFL. But I agree, he was number one overall pick to me as well, especially compared to Baker Mayfield.
Well, when all you have to do is have perfect 85-degree weather and nail co-eds, it might be tough to be concentrating if you're going to USC and being the face of the football team. He'll be fine in Jersey. They're perfectly acceptable with just hating everybody that's there. Isaiah Crowell, like, if I thought they were going to get better by signing a Browns running back, that would matter to me. This is just a terrible team. I love the under. I'd happily pay the -130. The Jets are just trash.
I can live with that. I'm not particularly inspired by them, so I think your assessment's fair. I do think they're like a coaching turnover away. I appreciate how feisty they were last year with Todd Bowles, but I think they need an offensive coach if you're going to have this investment in Sam Darnold. And I think he needs heavy coaching to make that step. So
this team is offensive.
That I would also agree with.
I'm proud
Oakland
of that.
Raiders. You snuck it in. It was a good job. Oakland Raiders, 2017, 6 wins. 2018, up to 8 Vegas projected wins. Raiders bringing back John Gruden, who wants to take football back to 1998, 2008. But probably really more like 1998.
It's more 98 wants to run the ball.
Sure. Yeah. He has no interest in throwing. He just wants to smash mouth it all. He brought on board former Rams QB coach Greg Olson as offensive coordinator. Bengals defensive coordinator Paul Gunther joins as well. Gunther was a surprisingly competent defensive coordinator last year. The Bengals were 6th in yards allowed, which we mentioned before. Greg Olson, not quite as accomplished, besides whatever credit you want to give him for coaching up Jared Goff last year. He's a career kind of 2 years and out offensive coordinator. He's had stops in, stops in Oakland, Tampa Bay, the Lions, Rams, and Jaguars. That's a guy who just keeps failing upwards or failing laterally, I guess. Not much here to love in terms of changes. They added Doug Martin to Marshawn Lynch, which I think could be a sneaky pickup if he's not too busy snorting PEDs off of strippers' anuses. I don't know that people do that with PEDs, but yeah, it's Doug Martin. He just loves them so much.
I'm pretty sure they just inject them. I don't think they have to snort them off of a prostitute.
It's Doug Martin, man. I don't know what he does. He's a muscle hamster. He does weird stuff. They also lost Marshall Newhouse to the Bills, a bit of a loss to their O-line, given how good he was last year. Replaced him with first-rounder Colton Miller, and their big signing was Bruno Giacomi, a player who PFF, Pro Football Focus, graded as the 80th out of 81st qualified tackles. So I don't love that. I don't love the loss of Michael Crabtree. I do like the extra opportunity for Amari Cooper, Martavis Bryant. Boy, he's got to figure it out this year, and if he does, sure, but is Gruden even going to throw him the ball? I don't know.
Is he going to be on the field?
That too. Is he going to be suspended for the entire year because he just can't figure his own life out? Who knows? 8 sounds right to me, and good coaches taking over a team does seem like a thing that usually helps out NFL teams and beating projected win totals and all of that. I don't think Gruden has it anymore. I don't know that I believe. I'm surprised he came with this whole like, yeah, we're gonna run it, we're gonna bring it back, and it's like you've been watching games for the last 7 years and talking to quarterbacks and all this stuff, and you don't. It baffles me, but I would probably take the under, and even though the over looks appealing because of the new coach bounce. I don't know.
While I'm showing some really disgusting pictures of Al Davis here, just pointing out the fact that his son has this haircut, which is fascinating. Yeah. So, of course, that guy would hire John Gruden.
And he drives a minivan, or no, one of those pedo vans with like the blacked out windows, and he also eats a P.F. Chang's every day. He's a weird fella.
I'd eat at P.F. Chang's every day. I wouldn't mind that.
Popcorn. If you were that rich, like you could do better with P.F. Chang's every day.
You need to. Anyway, not important. Over 8, -121. Vegas, I guess, liking the Gruden a little bit. I don't know what to make of this because I like Derek Carr. I think this could be a nice revival for Doug Martin, Marshawn Lynch, whatever. But I like Amari Cooper. I think Jordy Nelson is a really interesting ad. if Martavis Bryant can be on the field, I think this is a really scary offense. Um, Gruden could ruin that. Minus 72 point differential last year is kind of tough to overcome, but honestly, it wouldn't shock me if they won the AFC West.
One thing to note as well, David Carr, or David, I always do that. I always forget that he's not the shitty brother. He's the good, much younger brother. Derek Carr is a plus 2,000 MVP pick, which is very surprising given the fact that he only achieved 6.5 yards per pass attempt last year. So Vegas either knows something that we don't, or the public is sort of buying into Gruden a little too much, I would think. Something here doesn't smell right to me, though. I don't know. I'm sticking with the under 8.
Well, I mean, if the ball bounces right and they go like 10-6, I would imagine Carr gets some MVP buzz just because he's on the field. I mean, they're not going to do it with Connor Cook or EJ Manuel.
True, that's fair. I don't know. They don't inspire me in Gruden's approach, unless maybe he's playing a shell game and he's just doing this thing to get people to think like he's slipping. And he did sign guys who would seem like, oh yeah, they're trying to stretch the field and do more.
I think he just wanted $100 million. That's just me.
Also probably that. And he gets to go to a team that loves him and he's a legend and stuff. So, yeah, there's probably some positive vibes there. Who knows? I'm not crazy about the over. I could see it happening. It's just not one I believe in a ton on either side. Philadelphia, our Super Bowl champions, 2017, they had 13 wins. 2018, they are projected for 10.5 Vegas wins. Vegas giving some respect to the Eagles, but probably not enough that they won't wear their stupid masks again and claim they're underdogs. They returned the majority of their key pieces, but they did lose Bo Allen, Vinny Curry, and most importantly, their slot corner, Patrick Robinson, last year. They replaced those guys with Michael Bennett from the Seahawks, bringing on board Elodie Nagata from the Lions. Also, they did bring back Nigel Bradham at linebacker, which is a pretty key signing. Everything else offensively, I feel like they were net positive moves. Losing LeGarrette Blount, whatever, who cares about that? Jay Ajayi getting another year in the system, I think is great. They upgraded to me going from Torrey Smith to Mike Wallace for the slot receiver. Wentz obviously is the big item here. He is currently the third favorite to win MVP at plus 1,000. He's been participating in 7-on-7 drills. There are reports that his healing is ahead of any sort of the best possible prognostication. There's some growing pains, I think, with a new offensive coordinator and QB coach coming in, Mike Groh and Press Taylor, neither of whom have a ton of experience in those roles. I don't think any experience actually in those roles. I like the Eagles. I think their Vegas total is about right. I could see them going to 11, so I would take the over.
Over 10, minus 130. It's really hard for me to be impartial here because I have grown up hating the Philadelphia Eagles with every fiber of my being since I was a small child. Grew up about an hour north of Philadelphia. It is everything that I've ever known. Even though my dad is a Cowboys fan and I'm a Redskins fan, we both have shared hatred for said Eagles. I mean, they should be fine. I think the Giants still suck. I don't particularly think the Redskins are any good, so I see no reason why the Eagles aren't, easy NFC East favorites and, very likely playoff teams. I don't think Jay Ajayi is like the answer at running back, but I also don't think you necessarily need an answer at running back any longer. Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, Mike Wallace, I think that's a pretty good three-man combo. I like Zach Ertz quite a bit. Then they'll be fine. I just hope they lose.
I enjoyed what they did last year. I think to me what it comes down to is like, is there going to be a Super Bowl hangover? And is Doug Peterson like a program coach? Like, is he a guy who's like a Belichick who can kind of withstand the turnover, withstand losing key pieces? I would feel like they responded well last year to losing their quarterback, so I would be inclined to think he can do it again. But it is worth noting that there is obviously a bit of a drop-off after a Super Bowl win usually, and can this team weather that storm without the chip on their shoulder quite as much? I think it remains to be seen.
Yeah, the city of Philadelphia doesn't know what it's like to win, so it could be interesting.
We'll staying in Pennsylvania. It's weird how some of these line up where the teams just end up being in the same state. So Pittsburgh, 2017, they had 13 wins. 2018, they're projected for 10.5 Vegas wins. The Steelers are actually, their win total projected for this year falls in line with where they were last year. In terms of Pythagorean win total, they had the second most wins over what they should have achieved. So their 10.5 would be right in line with what the stats say they should have done last year. They made one big move going from Todd Haley to Randy Fichtner, who's best known as a Memphis coach, but has been in the Steelers organization since 2007. So he's been there a while. He's been the QB coach since 2010. Even though there is a change there, obviously going to a game-calling offensive coordinator, I think that Fichtner is probably embedded enough in the group and obviously has been stressed enough to get that role. So I think that may be a net positive. Let's see, Pittsburgh finished third in yards gained, has some room for improvement rushing the ball, where they were 25th last year despite having Le'Veon Bell. They just averaged 3.8 yards per attempt. Not a lot to love about their other moves. They added Morgan Burnett, and John Bostic is hoping to fill in for Ryan Shazier, who is probably never going to play again after his near paralysis. Fingers crossed he does that, because actually I do like him, and I think he's a great story. Overall, to me, though, this team seems right where they should be, 10.5, maybe 11. I'd probably take the over just because they have so much talent. And Juju, proud USC man, going to be great again this year. Take another stride. Offense in particular is going to be really good, I think. Over for me to 10.5.
Yeah, slight shading to the over right now, minus 132. That's at just 10, by the way. So 10.5 sounds absolutely perfect. They have Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, and Antonio Brown. Quite possibly the best running back and best wide receiver in football. It's hard to not like Pittsburgh in this scenario. If Pittsburgh makes the playoffs, I'm just putting this out there. The last 2 times that the Steelers have won the Super Bowl, do you know what they had in common?
They were World Cup years?
No. I was in Pittsburgh for the Super Bowl. The year that they played I believe they played the Packers and lost in like 2009 or 10, something like that. I was not in Pittsburgh for it. But the 2 wins, Chubster was in Pittsburgh celebrating that Super Bowl. By the way, just as an aside, if you can ever go to a city where they're going to win and have that chance to win the Super Bowl, that shit is bonkers. I have never experienced anything like that in my entire life. Greatest experience ever. Just bedlam on the streets. People don't care what you're doing. It's so cool. As long as you don't punch somebody in the face in front of a cop, you can do whatever you want. It's great. It's so great. Burning couches.
I actually had that experience when the Giants won it in New York. And New York, normally doesn't really get that crazy over wins because it's a big city and not everybody cares. The Giants win, though, was pretty big, where that was the entire Upper East Side was overwhelmed by drunk white guys who were like, "Whoa, fuck the Patriots, woo! David Tyree, woo!" And it's all right. It was pretty wild, and that's, so I'll co-sign on that.
Both times that I did it, I randomly bumped into another guy that I went to high school with in a sea of 500,000 people. They pulled me through a rose bush. I had cuts all over me, but all I wanted to do was hang out with them. Anyway, I like Pittsburgh here. Let's hope that Roethlisberger will do at least a slight amount of tutoring to Mason Rudolph, but other than that, you bet on the continuity and you bet on having, arguably the 2 most dynamic offensive players in football.
I agree fully. On to our final 5 teams now. San Francisco 49ers, a big one to talk about here. 2017, they got 6 wins, and mostly because of trading for Jimmy Garoppolo mid-season. 2018, they're projected for 8.5 wins in Las Vegas. They probably overpaid a bit in free agency with some of their signings, bringing back Jimmy Garoppolo to a monster deal, which actually is going to be very team beneficial in the coming years, but for now was a giant signing. They also added Richard Sherman and Jerick McKinnon, who was a sneaky pickup from the Vikings last year, who's going to be getting a lot of usage this year, I feel like. Everything else here remains the same. Sherman is not a fantastic player these days, but he will be an upgrade for San Francisco and a group that was 20th in passing yards allowed, 24th in passing touchdowns allowed in 2017. The 2-game suspension of Reuben Foster doesn't look great, but him playing again does. He was looking good last year. He's a very young, dynamic player who clearly has possibly some anger issues, but that only helps in football, which is why all these guys have problems. I like the Niners. I do kind of think they may start a little slow because the hype train is behind them so much. It wouldn't surprise me if they were more of a 2019 team than a 2018 team. I would probably take the over though at 8.5. It's 6 wins with just half the year with Garoppolo is a lot, and I believe in his ability to make the team better. So I would go over.
Under 8.5 wins, minus 136. Vegas not quite believing in the San Francisco 49ers. Look, I like Garoppolo. I don't expect him to be the savior. I'll tell you what though, if he ends up good, that's a bad look for the Pats.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care much for Jerick McKinnon. Pierre Garcon feels like he's 47 years old. I just don't. I feel like they have no talent on the offensive side of the ball, so I like that under quite a bit.
I'm surprised you don't like McKinnon. I think McKinnon's a perfect, like a zone runner who's going to be able to catch a lot of passes. To me, especially for fantasy this year, he looks like he's going to be amazing. I bet he's going to catch like 7 balls a game and, rush for between 50 and 100. And he's had monster rushing games too. He's slight. Maybe getting the full load won't be great for him, but he's been okay getting the full load with Minnesota. I hate saying the full load so much.
I bet you do.
But McKinnon does kind of strike me as a guy who I will be very much all over for season long and DFS this year. I don't know. I believe them a little more than Vegas does. I'm surprised that they're under. Maybe that's not public money right now. Instead, it's sharp money. I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't see it. Like, I think McKinnon makes for a better fantasy receiver than he does, or fantasy running back than he does for like an actual team.
Okay, I can live with that.
I'm pessimistic on the Niners.
It's fair. Another NFC West compatriot, the Seattle Seahawks. 2017, they had 9 wins. 2018, 8 Vegas projected wins. Looks like the Legion of Boom era is coming to an end with Seattle losing Richard Sherman. Cam Chancellor retired. Brandon Browner apparently committing murders, allegedly. Who knows? Vegas is projecting a 500 year for Pete Carroll's squad. Doesn't look great to me. I did think they made some good signings. They added Jerron Brown and Brandon Marshall at wide receiver, 2 undervalued players, along with Dante Johnson at quarterback and Maurice Alexander at safety, and Tom Johnson, another solid defensive lineman. The coaching moves they made, though, really worry me. Taking away Darrell Bevel, Tom Cable for the offensive line, and Chris Richard, replacing them with Brian Schottenheimer, not a good coach. Mike Solari, a guy who might be a fictional human being for all I know. Ken Norton Jr. also was god-awful in Oakland last year. He actually got offered a job for the Niners and then left like this year and then went to Seattle to do that. Nothing here excites me. The one thing to note, Seattle thinks Rashad Penny is going to be their Alvin Kamara and can single-handedly drag them out of the doldrums. I don't know that I believe that. I would probably go under. I think this is the end of their era.
Under 8 wins, minus 127. I don't want to disparage Seattle too much. This is my mom's favorite football team, which is obviously weird. She has been born, raised, and lived in Eastern Pennsylvania her entire life, has no ties to the city of Seattle, never been there. Just weird. Anyway, not that anybody cares. This team's going to live and die by Russell Wilson. If he could stay on the field, they'll have a shot. I don't like the offense, but working in a young running back is a lot easier than, some other spots. So he could catch fire and be fine. The Doug Baldwin, Tyler Lockett combo leaves a lot to be desired. Brandon Marshall is not Brandon Marshall from 8 years ago. I'm just hoping that Sebastian Janikowski can be awesome for them because that dude is that dude for me. I love him. I just wish he could take a beer out and take the kick. Just set it next to him before he kicks a field goal. He should just be allowed to do that because he looks like the type of person that would do that.
I don't know his first round selection. Like, I don't know how well that ages, but the fact he's had this much longevity, I feel like is kind of a cosign on that. Like, you probably shouldn't have picked him in the first round, but he's played for like 20 years. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a terrible pick. It's great that you can just not have to sign a different kicker, but yeah, that's a terrible selection. I don't care how long he played. Under 8, minus 127. Yeah, I'd be comfortable there.
Yeah, I don't think they're not inspiring a ton of confidence. Look, if the Rashad Penny hype is real, then I'm willing to adjust. And I think Wilson is still good enough to carry him to mediocrity. I just wouldn't bank on that. I think they lost too many guys, and they just feel like they're just chugging gas. I don't even know. That's not a phrase, but like they're just on their last vestiges of what they had, and I don't see it happening again this year. It sucks. I love Pete Carroll. Again, USC guy. I've met him. He's a fantastic human being, at least from my experience with him. Very nice guy, very, very positive attitude, but it's only carry you so far in the NFL, and I feel like he might be at his last stages there, which makes me sad.
Yeah, he might be chugging gas soon.
He might be, or he might move to another team and rejuvenate them. I feel like that's Tampa Bay next year, maybe. Let's talk about Tampa Bay now, though. 2017, 5 wins. 2018, 6.5 Vegas projected wins. Chester the molester, Jameis Winston, suspended the first 3 games for groping an Uber driver. He's just a piece of shit, really. He doesn't seem to learn. But I guess that was a couple years ago, so maybe he does. I don't know, but he seems still not a great guy. They brought basically back everyone of note, including Dirk Cutter, who mostly looked incompetent on Hard Knocks a few years ago. Or was that last year? God, was that last year?
I don't watch it.
Oh, I love Hard Knocks. It's one of my favorites. It's very well produced for reality TV.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it. I don't really care.
Defensively, they were pretty bad last year. They were dead last in passing yards allowed, third to last in total yards allowed, last according to Football Outsiders via DVOA. The offense was actually pretty good. They finished in the top 10 in total yards gained and passing yards per attempt, and they're bringing back all those key guys except Doug Martin, who missed a lot of time anyway. They should also see better offensive line play, bringing on board Ryan Jensen from Baltimore, who was the 9th best center according to Pro Football Focus. Defensively, they made some additions with signings Jason Pierre-Paul and Vinny Curry, along with Bo Allen. So they actually pilfered Philadelphia pretty heavily, and also Mitch Unrein. So I think that there's a lot of guys there who can help the rushing defense make them better. The offense was good. I don't know that I believe in the staff there, the Mike Smiths and Todd Mudkin at coordinator. I don't know that I love them that much. But I might take the over here. I feel like I might have taken the over for every NFC South team. But the offense is good. And Fitzpatrick can do Jameis's job well enough while he's out. He's going to sling it anyway. They just throw deep balls. I'm okay with it. It hurts me. I think the over looks okay. I feel like 7 wins is about right for them.
Line is off the board right now due to Jameis groping people. I don't see it here. 5-11 last year. That seems like it'll happen again. What's the good part of this offense? Just Mike Evans, and that's it.
Yeah, Mike Evans and Sean can spread the field. People believe in Chris Godwin too as being a viable third receiver. I think they still have Adam Humphries too. I'm not sure about that one offhand.
They do.
Yeah, I think they have enough. They have enough competent weapons there, and the offense benefits. Just having guys and having the one big dog and Mike Evans, and I think they look good enough to me. I was surprised by some of the offensive stats, but they do look good. They would look better offensively than I realized.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if bringing back all of the offense that was dog shit last year for a 5-11 team is really going to get you where you need to be. At some point in time, Ryan Fitzpatrick is just going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Top 10 in offense.
I mean, in what? In football teams in the state of Florida, or
they did put up a lot of yards. I think the defense was really the issue last year. It just didn't keep up with the offense.
They were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11th in points in the NFC. It's a trash team.
They didn't punch it into the end zone. I don't know. But I feel like there's a degree of variance to that, isn't there? They should be better at that, maybe? I don't know. Yeah. If you're getting yards but not scoring, like you are getting yards.
Yeah. I mean, they don't. They could hang a banner for that, I guess, and shoot those stupid cannons if they want. If the line was up, you said it was 6?
It was 6.5.
I'll take the under.
Okay. Our final 2 teams going to Tennessee now. 2017, they had 9 wins. 2018, 8 Vegas projected wins. They are handing over everything to Mike Vrabel after a year as a defensive coordinator. He will guide the defense, or actually he guided the defense rather last year to a pretty respectable 8th ranking in rushing yards allowed, much worse in passing yards allowed, 28th. He's bringing on board Matt LaFleur as his offensive coordinator, who was another guy who made his bones with the Rams last year. Again, the Rams really just got pilfered. A lot of guys trying to take credit for that growth and getting jobs as a result. I don't know that I believe in Matt LaFleur like that, but, hey, he's an unknown commodity, so that's something. Defensively, they should have some more growth for Adoree Jackson, Malcolm Butler. They also bring on board a new defensive coordinator replacing Mike Vrabel, Dean Pease, who has made his bones in New England. Overall, to me, I think that they'll be a little more aggressive defensively. I think I kind of want to believe in Matt LaFleur. I feel like I'm willing to give him credit more than I am like Greg Olson, who we talked about before. It's a tough division but Mariota seems like it should be the year he takes a leap. I don't know. 8 wins to me sounds about right. That's the Vegas projection. Ugh. I'm gonna go under. I'm gonna go under. It
Under
hurts though.
under
Ugh,
8 minus 123.
they could be sneaky though. They like getting rid of Murray too and just running out Henry. I feel like is a great move. Ugh, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to field it though.
Yeah, I would prefer the under for the Titans. While I'm not a huge fan of the Texans and Colts, like this particular season, they should both be better than they were, and I don't see any reason that the Titans get better. Um, if anything happens to Mariota, they got to go to Blaine Gabbert, which is funny as shit.
Wasn't bad last year.
Yeah, it's Blaine Gabbert, so I'm not wild about the wide receiver core for Tennessee. So I agree with that under 8, and I would happily go there. I would expect one of Houston or Indy to finish ahead of them.
Coming to think about it a little more, I do think the Titans do have some of the makings of a surprise team where they have a defensive-minded coach who's going to bring a certain smash-mouth approach. They also bring in a QB guy to help with Mariota, maybe open up the offense a little more than Mike Munchak did, or Mike Mularkey. I forget who it was. Whoever the asshole coach they was, who they had last year, who was terrible and was actually not terrible, but just afraid to do more than just run the ball 50 times a game with the two guys. I don't know. I think they could be sneaky now that I'm thinking about it a little more. They did kind of shore up some of the stuff they needed to shore up. Fuck, I'm going over the Titans.
Mariota, worst year last year of his 3 seasons in the NFL, just to point that out.
He's due to get better this year. He's a plus 4,000 shot to win the MVP, which actually I would have thought it would be better. So I don't know. Maybe I'm going back under.
I mean, for him to win the MVP, they've got to go 13-3. That's not going to happen.
He could just be really effective offensively, running the ball, passing. He showed the capability to do it. I just feel like they haven't used him correctly yet up to his full potential. But
yeah, he showed that capability at Oregon, not in the NFL.
Flashes in the NFL. He's had flashes. Washington, 2017, our final team, Washington, Josh's favorite team as well. The Redskins, 2017, 7 wins. 2018, projected for 7 wins. Redskins changed nothing with their coaching staff after a middling 2017. They also felt like their consistency is a strength because they finished strong last year, which sounds like the things that a team who sucks would say. They did add Alex Smith. They also brought on board former Seahawk Paul Richardson, who was pretty good last year and actually probably should have been retained by the Seahawks, but that's neither here nor there. They lose Ryan Grant. They lose Terrell Pryor offensively. Defensively, they added Orlando Scandrick, who will obviously help them with the slot receiver, with slot receivers. But I think his best days are behind him, and I say that as a Cowboys fan who all the years we were spent like, Orlando Scandrick, when's he coming back? He's just been hurt. He's not that good anymore. That's how I feel about it. Pernell McPhee, also a big addition at edge rusher, or maybe not big, a moderate addition. I don't know. They don't inspire me. 7-9 seems about right to them. Possibly 6-10, so I would go under.
Under 7 wins, minus 141. And you know what I say to that, Vegas? Couldn't agree more.
Aw.
Look, I mean, Colt McCoy hasn't been good since Texas. So if anything happens to Alex Smith, I'm very worried. Alex Smith will be passable. They're not going to just blow games, but I mean, it's a downgrade to the upside of this team by not having Kirk Cousins. I really like Darius Geis, actually. I think that he is... I'd love to know his Rookie of the Year odds. I mean, they're probably relatively low because the Redskins are bad and he might not get enough carries, but I think he could surprise people this year. I'm anxious to see Josh Doxson be healthy. Kind of a lost year for him last year. And, guys like Jordan Reed, one of my favorite Redskins. The problem is the team just sucks. They have no identity. They gave away what could be a cornerstone quarterback just because of stupid contract bullshit. I mean, the goal, if you're going to draft RG3 and Kirk Cousins in the same year and be assholes about it, if Kirk Cousins breaks out, fucking keep him.
True.
Sorry, this one's a sore spot for me, and we're getting to it last.
It's not great team building, that much is for sure.
No, I mean, they're a terrible institution. They're a terrible package. Dan Snyder is an abhorrent and reprehensible owner. I wish this team would light on fire. I hate them with a raging passion. All I want to do is wait out Dan Snyder and be part of the renaissance when they finally change their name. I've got the under, but honestly, I'm tired of even rooting for them.
Well, that's fair. That sounds like how I would feel if I were a Washington fan as well. One thing to note, Alex Smith is plus 6,000 for MVP odds right now, which is not as good as actually I would have thought that he would be given how he did last year. He was actually an MVP favorite parts of the year last year. So I guess we're not expecting a ton out of his performance in Washington. I could see him coming out with a chip on his shoulder. I think that's the only thing that I could see maybe benefiting them. And I think Paul Richardson was kind of a decent pickup, though he does feel a little bit like one of those Washington signs a wide receiver who had like a couple of good games and then they think he's going to be a game changer and he does nothing signings. But, yeah, I agree. There's not a lot to love here.
If Alex Smith wins the MVP, they should change the name to the Washington Alex Smiths.
I think that would be beneficial for everyone, but hopefully other Alex Smiths out there wouldn't be offended. Then they would boycott. that'd be upsetting.
Yeah, it wouldn't be great.
All right, that's every team in the NFL. We did it. We made it under 2 hours. Good job by us. This is part 1 of our preview. So we will be having a part every week, as I mentioned up top. We're having a part every single week. Next week we'll be doing QBs. Following week, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, defenses. Then as we get down stretch run, we're doing the basics of NFL DFS, in which we'll likely have a roundtable thing. Bring on board Osimo, pick his brain, see what he does with it. So all that stuff's coming up. Our NFL preview, we're hoping, is going to be one of the better ones out there. So stick with us. Chubster, any final words for everybody on the NFL?
Do you want to give Super Bowl picks? Or do we want to save those for the end?
Let's save them for the end, because I feel like we're going to learn more every week that'll help identify our... You know what? Let's make a pick now, and then let's revise them when we finish all the stuff.
Okay. Go ahead. This is your deal.
All right. I'm going to go with a Jaguars... This is the least sexy Super Bowl possible, which was also a possibility last year. A Jaguars-Vikings Super Bowl.
Okay. I'm going to go a little weirder. I talked about this sort of combination earlier. I am reaching a little bit, but I'm going to go Steelers-Packers.
Oh, nice throwback. That would be a big Super Bowl. I like that pick.
I think this could be like Aaron Rodgers' last stand, so to speak, before he starts slowly cresting into the end of his career.
How old is Aaron Rodgers right now? Is he like 33? 30?
He is. He'll be 35 this season.
Okay. So my big memory of Aaron Rodgers is when he strafed USC at the Coliseum one year. He threw like 25 of 25 passes to open the game. It was unreal. It was one of the best performances I've ever seen live, or honestly, and at all. Just so accurate, so good. It's sad that like these guys are getting old, because as we all are.
Yeah, luckily for me, age isn't going to affect me sitting in front of my computer. Thank God.
It'll only make you better. It'll only make us stronger.
Yeah, great.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see us go live before lock every day. All of the MLB stuff that we do every day. Obviously, we're going to have a ton more NFL coming up, a ton of NBA coming soon down the pike as well. So please subscribe now. Become a premium member, because we'll have a lot of stuff in that category as well of Osmo.com. Become a premium member, see all of our rankings, all of our ownership projections, all of Osmo's articles, and additional content. So please go sign up now. And thank you guys for tuning in for this 2 hour long special of ours.
Later on, people.
Bye, guys.